Hello and welcome to Ag PhD. I'm Darren Hefty.
And I'm Brian Hefty. Thanks for joining us today. You know, when the crop gets out, you got the fertilizer done, you've got your tillage done, you start thinking about next year. And today we want to talk about the importance of prepaying, not just about the benefits, but also about some of the drawbacks and things you need to watch out for before you prepay this winter.
I'm thinking about the field right behind us, Brian. There are some areas of this field that just yielded fantastic this year, and there are other areas that were a little disappointing. And when we look at the soils out there, they've got different capabilities. Some areas can be really high producing, other areas they're never going to be as high producing as that good ground. So we're doing some variable rate fertility out in this particular field. We'll talk about how we set that up and design those variable rate spots in the field and show you how easy it is to do.
Well, Christmas is almost here, so I'm thinking about a weed that looks a little bit like a miniature Christmas tree. We've got that coming up later in the show, but first, here's this week's Farm Basics.
Farm Basics is brought to you by the Liberty Link trait and Liberty herbicide from Bayer. The most reliable weed management solution, Liberty Link and Liberty herbicide are the link to efficient row crop production and sustainable weed management.
Last week on the show, we talked about our soil tests and things we were trying to change on our farm. Well, one of the things that got talked about just a little bit that we had some questions on, even from non-farmers, was cation exchange capacity. And the reason why the questions came is because I made the comment that as a farmer, you never want to exceed the amount of nitrogen you're putting on, but you've got to look at your cation exchange capacity number and multiply that times 10 to give you an idea how much nitrogen your soil can hold. So these non-farmers are concerned about, hey, what if a guy doesn't know that? How much nitrogen is really going in our water?
It's important knowing that cation exchange capacity. I think it's fun whenever I talk to non-farm groups, and I do some speaking for those kind of groups here and there. One of the things I'll talk about is what we're doing in our soils, and I'll say it's very important. Farmers have to know their cation exchange capacity, and people are like, whoa, what's that term? What's this big language? Do farmers have to be chemists? Well, to some degree, farmers do have to be chemists.
So cation exchange capacity is just a measurement of the type of clay you have in your soil, the amount of clay, and the amount of organic matter. But the important thing here is to understand that that's the holding capacity of your soil. So I want to come back to what I started with. That was, a lot of these non-farmers get all worried because, well, what if the farmer doesn't know his cation exchange capacity? Look, farmers aren't dumb. They've been farming the ground for a long time. They know if their ground is heavy or light, and that's really what it comes back to. Cation exchange capacity is a way to actually measure it, but as a farmer, hey, if I have sandier ground, I know I'm going to have a lower cation exchange capacity number. I know I can't put a whole lot of nitrogen out there. We just like having the cation exchange capacity number because it gives us an exact measurement, or at least a more exact measurement. So if I don't know the field and I'm consulting with this guy halfway across the country, I can say, hey, you got a CEC of 15, just make sure you're not getting more than 150 pounds of nitrogen out there.
Well, it's a pretty good guideline too, just for your own farm. Like Brandon mentioned, we've got CECs that really vary on our farm. Anywhere from 15 to 25 covers just about all our fields. When we think about those fields that are 25s on cation exchange capacity, we know that's heavier ground. We know we can put more fertilizer out, but just to have an idea of, okay, this one's a 22, this one's a 20. Okay, if we're right at 200 bushel corn and we want about 200 pounds of nitrogen, well, on this field, we're probably gonna have to split shot it because it can only hold 180 or it can only hold 200. We better split shot it just to be safe. The other thing that farmers will do, if they're worried about this, if they've got some soil textures that are a little lighter, they can use nitrogen stabilizers that holds the nitrogen in the ammonium form longer, which it has a positive electrical charge. Soil, by its own nature, has a negative electrical charge, so that positive ammonium will hold to that negative charged soil. So if you've got that nitrogen stabilizer in there, you can keep it in the positive form. If you don't have it, and what Brian's talking about is farmers are worried about the nitrogen getting into the nitrate form, where it has a negative charge, and a negative will not attract to that negatively charged soil particle. That's where we can see it move with water in the soil.
I guess the last thing I wanted to bring up with cation exchange capacity is just organic matter. So if a farmer wants to improve the holding capacity in his soil, he needs to raise his organic matter levels, and that can be done over time by planting a lot of high residue crops, things like corn, for example, and reducing tillage.
Well, cation exchange capacity is very important to farmers, but so is good weed control. Can you identify this week's weed?
You expect a lot from this seed, And as it grows through each stage of development, Agriculture Liquid Fertilizers is there, feeding your crop exactly what it needs when it needs it. So no matter how you fertilize, no matter when, Agro Liquid efficiently brings all the nutrients your crop needs for a great harvest. From 1 kernel in the ground to 600 on the ear. For better yields and better quality, Agriculture Liquid Fertilizers.
Upgrade your trailer to electric with the Rolltech electric system from Agricover. Strong, flexible pivot arms and motor mount rotate and telescope, allowing the roll tube to rise and flex over heaped loads. The positive automatic lock is impossible to back off to control the flow of grain. This integrated system uses one wireless remote to operate up to 10 tarps and hoppers, keeping your driver out of the dust, rain, and harm's way. See the Rolltech system in action at an Agricover dealer near you.
For lower cost, higher production, Mandaco Agri leads with versatility unmatched. Twister is the vertical tillage unit for no-till as well as conventional tillage. Twister's ease of maintenance is forgiving and rocks and has contour conformity equaling 0 downtime. Our hydraulically adjusted coulter angles make residue management easier, less costly. Spring or fall, the Mandaco Twister vertical tillage unit is the new leader. See your Mandaco Agri dealer. Visit northcountrymarketing.biz or call.
Looking to maximize yield? Quick Roots is a microbial seed inoculant that allows the plant root to explore a greater volume of soil, the key to higher yields. Quick Roots continues to generate yield response on corn, soybeans, wheat, and more. Quick Roots is applied to the seeds so the live microorganisms go right to work, enhancing seedling vigor, increasing the uptake of certain nutrients, including NPK, and expanding root volume. Maximize yield on your farm this season. Call TJ Technologies or your local dealer and get your Quick Roots today.
Whether you're feeding cattle, milking cows, or baling hay, the work on your farm is never done, which is why you need equipment that works as hard as you do. Get the efficiency and versatility you need with Case IH. From Farmall compact and utility tractors to balers and mowers, all Case IH equipment is designed with one thing in mind: getting the job done. To learn more, visit caseih.com/livestock.
Variable rate fertilizer. Farmers have had the ability to do it for years. The question has just been, does it pay?
And many farmers may have had the equipment to be able to accomplish putting on varying rates of fertilizer throughout the field, but did they have the confidence to set up their own plan and to really feel like, I'm going to get results out of this that I want next fall?
Right, because at this point, a lot of guys have just had it done, this variable rate fertilizer, custom done. But I guess what we wanted to talk to you about today is you can do it yourself, and is that going to pay for you on the farm?
All right, when we look at our own farm, over the last couple of years, it's been a great opportunity for us to do variable rate fertilizer. We had extreme drought. We had some areas in our fields that were pretty sandy, and we got 0 yield 2 years in a row on some of our fields in some of these little spots. Now, when you think about it, if you're applying the same rate of fertilizer across your whole field, now you've got all this fertilizer sitting in those spots from 2 years of applications. With variable rate fertilizer, we can simply take our yield map, find those spots where we got 0 yield this year, and do some soil testing in those areas to prove it and to back up the information. But when we see that our fertility levels are just off the charts because we've got all the fertilizer that we put out there for a full crop, it's pretty easy to say, you know what, when I do variable rate fertilizer, I'm not going to put additional fertilizer there or put very little in those spots.
Yep, but here's the thing. If you're looking for yield gain out of this variable rate fertilizer, chances are you're not going to get it, or at least not going to get that big level that you're looking for. You may see a small amount, but what you're going to find more than anything is 2 things. Number 1, you're going to be able to cut back on fertilizer in certain areas, like in our case, where we have all kinds of fertilizer sitting there in some spots. We don't need to add more fertilizer. There's more than enough to raise the next crop. The other side of it is, even if you save nothing, even if you gain no yield, here's the big thing. You're being more environmentally conscious. Yeah, it might not be exactly top of mind for you, but it is a big deal because we're all in this thing together. And if we as farmers don't do a good job, we don't manage our nutrients responsibly, someone else is going to tell us how to farm going forward.
All right, when you think about variable rate application across a field, what are we really going to do variable rate on, and what are we going to say, you know, it doesn't make a lot of sense for me? For example, on our farm, we like to use micronutrients because they are essential elements, and in many cases, they're the yield limiting factors in our fields. We found this across the country. So for us, using micronutrients is really a no-brainer. Well, micronutrients, we're using just a few pounds, and it costs about 10 bucks. Are we really going to variable rate that across the field? Absolutely not. Why would we do that? I mean, what are we going to vary it from, an $8 rate to a $10 rate? No, that doesn't make any sense for us at all. But when we're thinking about phosphorus and potassium, these are things that we're definitely going to variable rate across the field. And you know what? It may be using $100 or $200 worth of P and K in some areas of the field. In other areas, it may be $50. That's a big deal. That's a huge cost savings that we could have if there's plenty of nutrient already in those areas to raise the crop we want to raise.
The other big thing is thinking about the leachable nutrients. So I'm talking specifically the primary nutrient nitrogen and the secondary nutrient sulfur. Both of those are going to be leachable. At least nitrogen will be in the nitrate form. So you got to be real careful with both of those. So if you have sandy soil or just low cation exchange capacity numbers, these light ground fields, those areas in fields, you don't want to overdo it on nitrogen and sulfur because they're going to leach through when you get some rain. So those are the nutrients I'm especially concerned about. Yes, the phosphorus and potassium is one thing. That's okay. But the way I look at it, even in the lighter ground, the phosphorus and potassium is probably still going to stay there. We're not going to lose it to leaching.
It's more about your return on investment when you're thinking about that. If you put a little too much phosphorus on or a little too much potassium on, especially if you're deep placing it, it's going to be there for the future.
Yeah,
it's
but
not
here's
like it's
the
going to
big
go
question.
away.
Okay, so we bring that up, but if you own the ground, you say, well, I own the ground, so what? I'm just putting money in the bank. Big deal. I might put money in the bank for 20 years,
Okay,
but so
well,
what? I'll get the return someday, or my kids will, or my grandkids will.
You tell that to the banker when the ag economy tightens up here a little bit. I want to get a good return on my investment. I don't want to put a bunch of stuff out there that I'm not going to be able to access for a few years down the road. What I'm looking at, like with the nitrogen, as you were mentioning, we did some of this on our farm this fall. We went variable rate with some anhydrous application. So we put low rates out of anhydrous and varied it throughout the field. Now next spring, we're going to finish off the rest of the nitrogen that we need when we put our pre-emerge herbicide out. We can put it right with liquid, do it all in one pass as we're putting out our pre's. It will be a constant rate across the field at that time. So by varying the rate this fall, now we'll end up with a net varied rate out there, even though next spring we want to put liquid across the whole field.
Okay, let's come back to you doing this work yourself. Now, it can absolutely be done with strip till. It can be done with a number of different things on your farm, but let's say you have a dry fertilizer spreader. That's where it gets just a little bit tricky.
Okay, well, you talk about how it's not going to work, Brian, but then you think about how
it
can that work?
Yeah, it can work. You just have to have some type of variable drive motor on your spreader or whatever you happen to be running. So the big thing is just talking to your equipment provider on how things can work, and then having an agronomist you're working with to put together a prescription map. So we've got an agronomist that works in our office, and he puts together prescription maps for people, and it only takes him a few minutes. He'll usually base it on yield maps, but then we can also look at fertility maps. In other words, soil test maps. So for example, lime is something that's very important to variable rate, or especially spread in some areas, not spread in other areas. If I've got a soil pH of 6 in one area of the field and it's 8 in the other area, I don't really need a whole bunch of lime in that 8 area, but I absolutely need it in the 6.
Well, everybody certainly has a different situation. Your farm is different than ours, and your management style is a little different than ours. Your equipment is different, whatever. I mean, we can say that about anything. It's just important that you take a look at variable rate, especially on things like fertilizer. It can impact the environment if we do things wrong, and people are certainly looking. If we're making mistakes out here, it's going to bring more regulation to us, and we don't want to have that happen. Plus, fertilizer is really expensive. You know that on your farm. You don't want to over-apply, so learn a little bit more about it and do variable rate fertilizer on your farm. You can study up on it this winter and be ready to go next year.
Well, another thing you need to study up on this winter is how you're going to control our weed of the week. We'll tell you how we do it on our farm coming up later in the show.
For years, FarmLogic has been the easiest and most convenient way to keep up with your farming operations. Well, it just got better. Introducing FarmPad for your phone. You always have your phone with you, so entering records as they happen is as easy as a touch of a button. Chemical database, GPS, service records, and more. When you do it on the farm, save it on your phone and it's backed up forever. Call or visit farmlogic.com for a free trial and find out why FarmLogic is the best decision tool for the farm.
Honey Wagon? Can the sweet talk. Out here we treat manure, and when we talk treats, we don't mean cupcakes. Treating manure with More Than Manure Nutrient Manager can reduce solids in your pit or lagoon and ammonia levels in confinement buildings. PU, try N and P. MTM is the first and only nutrient manager proven to reduce nitrogen loss and phosphorus lockup. That's fertilizer loaded with yield potential. Looking for proof? Check the bin. Isn't that sweet? Results you can't ignore, a pit you finally can.
At Titan Machinery and Case IH, we offer better solutions for all your production needs. It's more than our job, it's who we are. We are parts. We are service. We are training. And most importantly, we are here for you. In any season, for every reason, we've got you covered. Case IH and Titan Machinery, better solutions.
You expect a lot from this seed, and as it grows through each stage of development, Agriculture Liquid Fertilizers is there, feeding your crop exactly what it needs when it needs it. So no matter how you fertilize, no matter when, Agro Liquid efficiently brings all the nutrients your crop needs for a great harvest. From 1 kernel in the ground to 600 on the ear. For better yields and better quality, Agriculture Liquid Fertilizers.
If you watch Ag PhD TV, you'll love the new Ag PhD radio show each weekday on Rural Radio Sirius XM Channel 80. This is Darren Hefty. On the new Ag PhD radio program, we'll take live callers and provide the agronomic information and brotherly banter you've come to expect from Ag PhD. We'll feature a Back 40 segment where we talk to farmers and agronomists around the country to share what's going on with crop production. And it wouldn't be Ag PhD without addressing a pest of the day. Tune in to the Ag PhD radio show each weekday at 2 p.m. Central on Rural Radio Sirius XM Channel 80.
When it comes to prepaying your inputs, there are a lot of reasons why a farmer would want to do it. We're going to talk about that a little bit today, but we also want to get into the reasons why you might not want to prepay on your farm.
All right, first of all, I like to prepay, and the reason why is I want to make sure I get what I want. I want a certain seed, I want a certain hybrid, I want a certain soybean variety. I want to make sure I get it. And a lot of times if I prepay early with my dealer, he'll book it for me, he'll save it for me. I'll get what's in tight supply, and typically it's the products that yielded the best this year or we expect to yield the best next year. So I want to make sure that I've got stuff locked in. That's probably my biggest reason for prepaying. The other thing is I want to max out on my discounts. I'm going to plant seed on every single acre. I'm going to use herbicides and crop protection products in every acre. Well, if I can save a whole bunch of money on them by buying them early, it sure beats leaving the money in the bank. If you've got money in the bank, you're earning 1% maybe on it.
Well, let's get real specific. Okay, let's say that you can borrow your money for 4% APR and you're getting 12% APR. So that's a net gain of 8% APR. If you prepay 6 months in advance, that's 4% you're gaining. So if, let's say on your farm, you need to prepay $300,000 times 4% is $12,000. You just made yourself $12,000 just by signing a check.
Well, it's a big deal, and it helps everybody out in the whole system because now your dealer can ship product in earlier because he knows exactly what you want. He can probably even get it out to your farm early in the season, which really benefits you because, you know what, especially on any of these hybrids or any tight supply products, I want to have them on my farm. That way I know for sure that I'm going to get them. I'd rather take it. I think that's a good strategy.
Okay, but here's the other big reason why a lot of guys prepay, and one of the reasons why we do on our farm too. It comes back to income averaging. The government allows us farmers to use cash accounting. Because of cash accounting, if you prepay for expenses like fertilizer, seed, chemical, those types of things, you get 100% deduction this year. But here's the thing, you have to be very specific. You have to buy specific products at exact quantities and specific prices. The reason why you would want to delay your tax bill, it's not avoiding the tax bill because sooner or later you've got to pay it. But the reason why you want to delay it is basically you get to use that money.
When you think about the bad side, let's just talk about this spring. There were a lot of guys that wanted to plant corn and all of a sudden it got too late to plant corn and they had to switch to soybeans, or they didn't get anything in at all and had to take prevent plant, but they had prepaid inputs somewhere that wouldn't give them their money back.
Right, so here's the thing. Before you prepay this year, you need to find out all the details. Once you've given the check to somebody, now they're the one in control. Until you give that check, you're the one in control. So make sure you know when you can get your money back. At a lot of places that we deal with, you can get your money back any day, no questions asked. The other thing is, are you going to get interest on that money? What are they going to pay you back for interest, or are they just going to give you the money? Or are they going to make you use it next year for purchases? You've got to find that stuff out. Another big thing is that retailer still going to be there come spring? You're putting a lot of faith in them. You don't have any collateral when you prepay typically. You're counting on them to be there 4 months or 6 months or 8 months later when you want the product. So you've got to know that it's somebody you can trust.
Well, you want to make sure that you get the right products if you have our Weed of the Week. This one can be tough. It's resistant to certain products. We'll explain coming up next.
The Weed of the Week is sponsored by the Enlist Weed Control System from Dow AgroSciences, a new herbicide and trait system that will build on glyphosate.
Your farm tells a story, one that continues with the decisions you make. Introducing the Enlist Weed Control System, an advanced herbicide and trait system that will build on glyphosate for exceptional control of tough weeds. The next chapter begins.
Our Weed of the Week is Russian thistle. It looks a little bit like a Christmas tree when it's small. Unfortunately, it's not nearly as pleasant as a Christmas tree.
Well, no, because it can take away yield. And when we think about in corn production, we typically don't have a lot of Russian thistle because our pre-emerge herbicides are not too bad. Things like Balance Flex do a nice job controlling it early. Even Verdict has done a nice job too. Post-emerge, Roundup, and Liberty have been fantastic on Russian thistle. And then, of course, we've got Status available to us in corn. It's done a nice job.
Okay,
Russian thistle no problem.
Yeah, but here's
corn.
the thing. You talked about resistance. What are you getting at with the resistance?
Well, one of the first things that we saw on our farm is we saw Russian thistle not dying when you'd spray ALS type products on it. So like in soybeans, for example, where we're using some Pursuit and it wasn't working on Russian thistle anymore. In wheat, there's a lot of products that are ALS family products that just don't work on it, like the Addition products, Addition Broadspec, Addition Tank Mix, the old Glean, those kind of products.
The big thing I look at is this doesn't have a lot of leaves on there, so it's hard to stick chemical on. So where we've seen issues also is when a guy is using too much water. And I know most chemical companies are going to tell you, use lots of water, use lots of water. No, you don't want to do that with Russian thistle when you're spraying it post-emerge, because what happens is your droplets aren't very concentrated and you can't get much for water on there. So you want to have very concentrated droplets.
Well, we can do a pretty good job in wheat and Russian thistle, but here's one of the things that a lot of guys miss. You can use a pre-emerge herbicide. Use Sharpen. Use a couple ounces of Sharpen Down, add that right in with your burn down. It's an awesome burn down product, plus it has residual on these small seeded broadleaves like Russian thistle.
Yep, otherwise Husky is pretty good post-emerge. Now when we get to
soybeans, at the high
yeah.
rate, I would say this, the standard rate, a lot of guys look at, well, I'm only gonna spend this much on my wheat. Don't look at that. Look at what the rate it's going to take to actually kill the weeds. It may only cost you $2 more than what you're like, well, I'll only spend this. Spend the extra $2. Do a great job on a weed instead of kind of half kill it and set it back a little bit. That's where we end up with problems.
Okay, in soybeans we have a lot of things that'll control it. Pre-emerge. Post-emerge it gets a lot tougher, but pre-emerge we recommend putting one of the yellows down along with Sencor or Metribuzin, and then if you want you could throw some Valor or Authority. They're excellent as well.
And post-emerge in soybeans, what do you use besides FlexStar?
Exactly, that's the whole thing. So you can try Cobra, you can try a number of these other products. We have nothing that's great post-emerge in soybeans for Russian thistle control, so make sure you're using at least one pre-emerge herbicide. I'd prefer to see even 2 or 3 pre's, then you'll be in great shape with Russian thistle.
If it's not Roundup resistant in your area, then you can just use Roundup, and Roundup will get it. FlexStar would be the kicker that will also have a little bit of residual post-emerge.
You can also use Liberty, of course, on Russian thistle too. Well, that's it for our weed Russian thistle, but stay tuned. Iron Talk is coming up next.
Iron Talk is brought to you by Case IH.
What are farmers doing to feed the planet? They're using Quadtrek technology, soil management, and planting systems from Case IH to foster a better growing environment that maximizes yield potential. Visit caseih.com to be ready.
Some people call it mistakes. My dad calls it experience. However you look at it, in today's Iron Talk, I'll discuss 2 strip tillage mistakes or things we would change next time. Contrary to what most people like to do, we actually enjoy talking about our mistakes. I'm not sure where I heard this, but the saying goes something like this: it's okay to make mistakes. Just try not to make the same one twice. Now, we've had some weather this fall that made the field work interesting to say the least. It got pretty cold on us and the ground got too hard for strip tilling. It got wet at times, but never too bad. Then things warmed up a little bit and we ran as fast as we could to finish up. I'm not trying to complain, but there were a couple things that, looking back, we would have done differently. First, we strip tilled a field that was a real battle. The tops of the corn plants above the ear all fell off prior to harvest, so that part of the corn plant never ran through our chopping corn heads. When we strip tilled the field, the stalks in the ground were wet and tough to cut through. So after stripping the field, we ran through with a twister to chop up the bigger pieces of stalk and facilitate a quicker breakdown of the stalks. In hindsight, we obviously should have done that first before we strip tilled because we kind of messed up our strips a little bit, and just driving back through that field, it wasn't ideal. Lesson learned. Our second, I'll call it mistake, was one of rushing. It was the last decent day and snow and cold was in the forecast for the very next day, so we hurried to strip till the last field we had. However, we needed to broadcast spread some dry zinc sulfate to deal with the severe deficiency that showed up in our grid soil samples that we pulled this fall. Since we've already strip tilled that field, we didn't want to run out there and risk packing down our nice seed bed that we had just built. Our solution, which hasn't been done yet, is to wait until the ground is frozen hard and run back out there. We're going to try to do this in the spring, so the ground is frozen in the morning but thawing in the afternoon. If we do it that way, we can go back and dry spread across the field without messing up our strips. The important thing is not that we did everything right in the first place this fall. It's all about learning from your mistakes so you make better decisions going forward. That's all for today's Iron Talk, and now back to the show.
For lower cost, higher production, see your Mandaco agri-dealer. Ask about the best production-built land roller on the market. Mandaco, simple design for easy transport to easy use. 12 to 85-foot widths, heavy-duty 4x8 3/8-inch tube frame, and now available with a steerable wing wheel. Mandaco land rollers, improved soil-to-seed contact, faster, more uniform germination, less moisture loss, eliminate downtime due to rocks. See your Mandaco agri-dealer. Visit northcountrymarketing.biz or call.
Capello corn headers are designed for producers who expect more. Expect more grain in your bin. Expect an industry-leading 2-year manufacturer's warranty. Expect Capello-designed chopping and folding options that save you time and money. And whether red, green, or yellow, expect row size options that fit your operation because all producers deserve the best. Expect Capello. It's ahead above the rest.
For years, FarmLogic has been the easiest and most convenient way to keep up with your farming operations. Well, it just got better. Introducing FarmPad for your phone. You always have your phone with you, so entering records as they happen is as easy as a touch of a button. Chemical database, GPS, service records, and more. When you do it on the farm, save it on your phone and it's backed up forever. Call or visit farmlogic.com for a free trial and find out why FarmLogic is the best decision tool for the farm.
Looking to maximize yield? Quick Roots is a microbial seed inoculant that allows the plant root to explore a greater volume of soil, the key to higher yields. Quick Roots continues to generate yield response on corn, soybeans, wheat, and more. Quick Roots is applied to the seed so the live microorganisms go right to work, enhancing seedling vigor, increasing the uptake of certain nutrients, including NPK, and expanding root volume. Maximize yield on your farm this season. Call TJ Technologies or your local dealer and get your Quick Roots today.
If you watch Ag PhD TV, you'll love the new Ag PhD radio show each weekday on Rural Radio Sirius XM Channel 80. This is Darren Hefty. On the new Ag PhD radio program, we'll take live callers and provide the agronomic information and brotherly banter you've come to expect from Ag PhD. We'll feature a Back 40 segment where we talk to farmers and agronomists around the country to share what's going on with crop production. And it wouldn't be Ag PhD without addressing a pest of the day. Tune in to the Ag PhD radio show each weekday at 2 p.m. Central on Rural Radio Sirius XM Channel 80.
Closed captioning for Ag PhD is sponsored by Norwood Sales.
The all-new S-Cube commercial tender is the only tender on the market with poly tanks, giving you the capability to haul seed, fertilizer, water, or liquid fertilizer. Each cube can hold 300 units of seed, 2,000 gallons of liquid, or 300 cubic feet of fertilizer. Options include full functioning wireless remote, stainless steel conveyors, and self-contained hydraulics. Get yours today at Norwood Sales.
That's all the time we have for today's show, but be sure to join us again next time for another Iron Talk, Weed of the Week, Farm Basics, and much more. I'm Brian Hefty.
And I'm Darren Hefty. Thanks for watching Ag PhD.
Fertilizer is a term commonly used to describe plant food. Did you realize all growing plants require primary, secondary, and micronutrients in order to grow properly and produce food for humans? For more information, visit the Responsible Nutrient Management Foundation at rnmf.org.